I want you to take a moment, have a look at this design, and have a think about what are the 5 key things that I've done incorrectly in this design that's been completed in Figma. Have a think about it and feel free to pause this video as well. Alright, so hopefully you've got some ideas. Now, with Figma, it's such a great tool that anyone can come in and design beautiful designs like this. However, the process and how you get to this point can either take 30 minutes, an hour, or even up to 5 hours. But in this crash course, I'm going to teach you how to achieve all this in like 30 minutes, the shortest route possible, but also doing a lot of the hard work automatically. So let's dive right in and start learning how to master Figma together, baby. Damn, that was pretty cool. Well, I'm not really even a video editor, but I thought that was pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of myself. So, yeah. All right, so take a look at this design. We have 5 key things that were done incorrectly. So if I simply show you the header area, you can see that a lot of the items inside the header that should be vertically aligned, centered with the button, aren't simply done. And this can all be done automatically inside Figma. So if I wanted to center all these items, as you can see here, I'd have to manually go in and create that proper spacing and that center alignment, which wastes a lot of time. Second thing is that you can see that there's 23 pixels between about and contact, and then 29 pixels between leader, board, and about. All this spacing issue can be automated inside Figma. So you should not be manually creating spacing in between each items. It's just a waste of time. The third thing is that you can see this button design. If I wanted to increase the space or rename this to, for example, sign up, you can see that the button doesn't automatically wrap around the text. Once again, waste of time. We can do this automatically. Now, another thing that you might not have noticed is that these 2 buttons are technically the exact same button. They're both white with a white border around it. So instead of having to manually, if I wanted to change the buttons to maybe 30% fill, so to bring out the white, then this one should automatically update as well. Once again, waste of time. We can do this all automatically. Now, 2 more things that are done incorrectly is that creating these layouts, sometimes you just might have to decide to move some text below the buttons, or you want to move the buttons up above. And now, as you can see, I would have to manually create all these layouts that just are a waste of time. All this can be done automatically inside Figma. Last but not least, the most important one, if I wanted to resize this design for example, a tablet view, this is not responsive and this is not automatic. But once again, you can automate all this inside Figma. So what we are going to create in this crash course is that we are going to go ahead and recreate this entire design. But first, we are going to make sure that everything is automated. So if you wanted to vertically align all the text and logo to the top, we can simply click on this little toggle over here, this beautiful auto layout feature that we love to call it, and that will achieve it. If we wanted to adjust the spacing in between all the text, we can do so by just simply adjusting these numbers, and it will all be systematic and it's always going to be automatic for you, saving you so much time. If we ever wanted to change the words inside a button, we can do so and it will automatically adjust for you. If we ever wanted to move content around on a page, we can do so automatically for you. If we ever decided to change the color of a button or a component that is reused throughout your designs, and for example, changing 10 to 50%, it will automatically be done for you. And then if we also finally wanted to grab this design and resize it for tablet, once again, I think you already know what I'm about to say. Here we go. I'm kidding, guys. It's going to be automatic. So in this crash course, we are going to build this landing page from scratch with all the best practices and utilizing Figma to its best potential. So you are going to go from beginner to practically intermediate or advanced, probably 30-40 minutes. So, oh, and by the way, if you want to expedite the process and really deepen your understanding in UI design and Figma, make sure to check out my Figma Masterclass course. We cover everything from design systems, responsive design, UI design, component management, file management, literally everything all the way through to advanced prototyping as well. We've had over 3,000 students take on this course, and a bunch of them have publicly shared their positive experience with this course as well. And by the way, I just received an email a couple of hours ago prior to recording this video where a student personally reached out to thank me how much he's learned in this course. So if you are interested, there is a link in the description. You can also get 10% off, limited time only. Without further ado, let's get back into the video. Let's dive right in, guys. And if you want to download this file to follow along, link is in the description. So if you like that, gently smash that like button, guys. So once you are in the file, guys, we're going to go ahead and hit F on our keyboard, or you can create a new file from scratch. You don't have to download this one. And once you hit F, you will notice that on the right-hand side in the design panel, we have access to all the different size frames. So these are presets that Figma will provide us. So we're going to design a desktop like homepage. Feel free to select any of these because really, as you saw, our design is going to be responsive. So you can always adjust the width and you can accommodate for a MacBook Pro 16, 14, desktop, or even iMac. So I'm going to go ahead and just select MacBook Pro 14 inches, and I'm going to drag this down. Now, in the file, I've also provided a color palette as well. So I'm just going to bring this over, and if you've downloaded the file, you can also access this as well. If you're following along without the file, feel free to create your own color palette just for fun to explore new things. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is, since I've already got some color styles set, instead of having to manually set these colors for buttons and for backgrounds, I'm going to go ahead and create something called a global style. So by selecting any of these circles, you can see that under the fill in the design panel over here, that a color has already been set. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on these 4 dots, click the plus icon, and this will allow me to turn this into a reusable color style throughout the whole of my Figma project. So this is really the darkest gray that we're going to be using in this design. So I will call this gray 900. Now, you might be thinking, why 900? Why with the /? These are just naming conventions. So if I click on this style, you can see that this is telling Figma that under the category of gray, it's going to be 900. So it's going to be the darkest gray in my color sort of palette. Now, over here, I'm going to select the second one. I can click on the plus as well, again, and just type in 800 for this one. And then this one might be 500. I'm just eyeballing it. So obviously this is a sample project, so I don't need to get it perfect. So we've got 900, 800, 500. Then I'm going to grab this a fourth one, and this one might be gray 50. So that might be the lightest one, as you can see. Obviously, if you're working on a full scale project, you'll have 900 to 50 with increments of 100. So 900, 800, 700, 600, and so on. Then I've also got my primary color over here. I'm going to turn this into a global style as well, and I'm going to call this primary /500. So this is the mid purple of all the primary shades and hues, right? And that's already done. So I've already got my global styles of colors, and I'm going to select the frame, and I'm going to go to fill, and then I'm going to put down the 900. As you can see, automatically, without having to remember what the hex color was, that gibberish of like 4HZ 1Z, I just simply select what I want to use from my global styles. Now, the second thing I'm going to do now is actually go ahead and create this header. Now, as you can see, I am using 2 fonts here in this design. Work Sans, as you can see, for just the copy, the body copy, Work Sans. And then I'm using Clash Display. You can find these free fonts online on Google. I'll also leave links in the description if you want to download these fonts. But for this design, I wanted to make it feel a little bit more techy, a little bit more edgy, more modern. So I wanted to go with a font that had a few more curvatures on the design, in the design, and just something a little bit more different, a little bit more flavor in the font. So in the typeface. So once again, I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, put some text down, and I might just say the designership because that's the logo for this design, and I might just give it some fancy look over here. Now, obviously, we're not going to go into the details of how we're going to be designing every little detail, because the key thing is to teach you how to utilize Figma and its key features. So with that in mind, I've put the logo down and I'm sort of like starting to flesh out our page. The second thing I actually want to do before I start designing the header is to give this a grid layout. So without having to eyeball where I should end some text or how I should align things, we should utilize a grid layout to just give us some guidelines to work with. So I'm going to select the actual artboard. I'm going to head over to layout grid and I'm going to hit the plus icon. I'm going to click on these 9 dots, change the grid to columns, change the count from 5 to 12. I might change the red to white for those who might find it a bit difficult to see the red on the dark background. Then I'm going to leave it as stretch. I'm going to add the margin of either 32 or 40, depending on what you want. I'm going to go for 40. And then the gutter is going to be 20 pixels. So we're going to have 40 pixels on the margins, as you can see outside here, and then 20 pixels in between each column, as you can see in between each column. So that creates a grid layout. Looking good, and that is perfect. Now the third thing that I'm going to be doing is just adding in those links and adding in that button as well. So the links were leaderboard. So obviously you hit T in your keyboard and just simply put some text down. Then we had about page, and then we also had a contact page, right? And obviously we're going to be building this systematically, right? So right now, it's really difficult for us to align these elements. So I'm gonna select all 3 and I'm gonna hit Shift A on my keyboard. Now Shift A is a shortcut for auto layout. And this is a feature that there's a little bit of complexity to it, but all you need to know is that this will automatically align all your content or anything that sits inside this auto layout component. Now I'm gonna change the spacing to around 24, and you can see that's automatically done. And that's all I need to do. Now, if I hit enter on my keyboard, I can then access all the links inside. So the shortcut enter or return on your keyboard will help you automatically nest down into any group of elements inside your sidebar. So for example, if I clicked on MacBook Pro 14-inch, which is the actual frame, if I go ahead and hit enter, you can see that it will select everything inside the MacBook Pro nesting. Then if I hit it again, it will select everything inside the next nested layers. So it's a very quick shortcut that I like to use. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply select these links. I'm going to change the size to 16. Feel free, once again, you don't have to follow along perfectly one-to-one. You can go ahead and explore new things while we're following this tutorial. I'm then going to align the text to the center. And then the third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add that button. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard. I'm going to click on my artboard, and then I'm going to type in login. Now, we aren't going to be using rectangles. We are going to be using auto layout to create that bounding box. So I'm going to hit Shift A on my keyboard, and you can see that this will group this text inside an auto layout component. I'm going to change the border radius in the top right corner, which is the rounding of the corners, to 4 pixels. And then I'm going to change the actual padding, right, under auto layout, clicking on this icon over here. I'm going to make it 8 pixels at the top, 16 pixels on the right hand side, 8 pixels on the bottom, and 16 on the left hand side. As you can see, it starts to create some space in between. Then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click plus under the fill, and then I'm going to give this a white background of 10%. So you can see it gives that nice little opaque background. And then I'm going to go ahead under the stroke, hit the plus, and give this a white stroke, which is a white border of 1 pixels, and I'm going to make this 20%. So as you can see, we now have a beautiful button that is going to be scalable. So if I change this text, it's going to automatically wrap it for us. So that is the power of auto layout. Now, what we need to do now is we've got all the components for the actual header, right, as you can see over here. But if we ever decide to scale this, we want to make sure that it sits beautifully inside the actual grid layout. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select all these components, right? We've got all the components inside our header, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift A. So once again, that creates an auto layout component. So now I'm going to go ahead to my layers and change the layer name to header, and I'm going to simply zoom in, and then I'm going to hit Command on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to simply drag this out until it's around 80 pixels, right? It can be 72, it can be 80. Actually, I might just keep it at 72. There we go. What I'm going to do next is under auto layout, I'm going to go click on this icon, change from packed to space between. So that's going to create automatic space between these components. And then I'm going to change the alignment to center, right? So that's looking good. I'm then going to move this header up to the top. That's perfect. And if I really wanted to, I can actually hold down Option and click and drag the sides until it hits the edge, right? And if we ever wanted to create that space so it sits inside the grid layout, I can click on the icon again and I can add 40 pixels. I believe it was 40 pixels, right? Yep, 40 pixels on the left, 40 pixels on the right. And as you can see, it perfectly sits inside the grid layout now. All right, so once that's done, if we go ahead and select the frame and then resize this actual design, what do you think will happen to this header? Have a think about it. What do you think will happen if I resize this? So if I resize this, nothing is going to happen. Why? Because what we need to tell Figma is that if we select this header, we want to make sure that the constraints are set to left and right. Once we set the constraints to left and right, we are telling Figma that we want this block of content to stick to the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So if we then rescale it now, it is going to be perfectly centered and perfectly responsive. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my grids by hitting Control G, and that will turn on your grid layout. So Control G will turn them off and on. And the second thing I'm going to start to design is actually the content over here. So as you can see, we've got a nice logo, we've got some text, we've got some more text, and then we've got some buttons as well. And we also want to keep it centered in the design, so whenever we scale it, it's going to stay in the center. So what I'm going to be doing first is hitting F on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to hold down Shift and draw a square. Now holding down Shift will allow you to create any design, any shape by fixing the aspect ratio. So it will always stay even. So we're going to create a rectangle, a square that's 72 by 72. We're going to give it the corner radius of 4 pixels. So round the corners by 4 pixels. We're then also going to give it a fill of 10% white, and then a stroke that's going to be white, and it's going to be 10% as well. Right, so that's going to be where the logo sits. All right, so once that's done, I'm just going to pop into Google and I'm just going to type in Figma logo transparent. I'm just going to find a transparent logo of Figma, and I'm going to quickly find one and then copy that. And then I'll simply paste it down into Figma. I'm going to resize it. There we go. And I'm going to find this frame and I'm just going to pop it inside the frame. So I'm going to click on this image, pop it inside this frame, and you can see it's sitting inside now. As you can see, it's sitting inside the frame because it's being cut off. And I can resize this to whatever size we want. It might even make it just 32. And if I wanted to align it to the center, I can click on these icons at the top, align horizontal center, align vertical center, and it'll sit right there. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and label this as the Figma-logo. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just type some text down. So let's master Figma together, baby. So what we're going to do is make sure it's whatever font you want. I've got Clash Display, semi-bold, 72, and I might increase the line height to around 72, so it's 100%. And we're going to bring this up. Now you might have noticed, if we take a look at this design, you can see that we've got some specific styling, which is just the stroke. If we want to do that, we can just simply copy the second line of text, select the first one, hit Command D, which is duplicate the text, bring it down, double click to highlight all the text, Command V, and that will paste that text back down. We can remove the fill by heading over to the fill, removing it by clicking on the minus icon, and then hitting a plus on the stroke, and then simply changing black to white, and we've got that beautiful texture or color or style for the text. Now I might make it 2 pixels just to bring it out a little bit, and I might just make the letter spacing 0%, so it just increases the space in between the text to 0, so it's a little bit more legible. So that's looking good. Now the third thing we need to do as this is just put some text down. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard. I'm just going to copy this text and then bring it over. So I can hit Command V, that brings it over. And obviously this is just work sans, regular 20 pixels with 28 pixel line height. Now it's time to create those buttons, and I don't want to go ahead and recreate them from scratch. So I'm actually going to reutilize the sign up button that we've created. I'm going to go ahead and rename this button to button, and I'm going to go / secondary, because this is not the primary button. The primary button is that nice purpley pink. So this one's going to be called secondary, and I'm going to hit Command C, and then I'm going to copy it and paste it over onto the right hand side. All right, so I might just wrap this in a frame so you guys can see, and give this a background of black so you can see. So we have a button secondary, right? And then I'm going to hit Command D to copy it, bring a second version of it down here, and I'm going to call this button primary, as you can see. Now I want this to be the primary color, right? So we might just grab the pinky purple from here, and we might just click on this fill, click on the eyedropper icon, grab that pinkly purpley blurple color, and that's looking good. And then we might just remove the add a stroke to it, but actually add a darker color to it. So I might just go 10% with a black border. Feel free to change it to whatever you want. And now we have a primary button and a secondary button. Simply highlight the two, click on create component set. That would create your one button with two variants now. So you can see the structure is a little bit different. And you can see that on the right hand side, you can see that we have two variants, right? So we have variants, we can change the property name to, for example, state or type. So we might say, what type of button is it? Is it a primary or is it a secondary, right? So once you've created that, we can now head over to our design. We can select our MacBook Pro 14-inch frame, hit Shift-I on your keyboard, and we can type in button. Now, I've got two buttons over here because I've created a previous button component for the previous example. So I'm going to select the one that we just created. And as you can see, if I drag this down on the right hand side, I can now change this to primary, and I've got a primary button. And then if I duplicate this, drag this over, I can change the primary to secondary, and I'm already creating this style over here. So start supporting and learn more. So I can go ahead and go start supporting, and then bring this over, and then learn more. Looking good. So obviously if we wanted to, we can actually increase the size of the buttons and whatnot, but just for this example, I'll keep it as is for now. Okay, so we've got all our content in here. But remember, if we want to now create that systematic, automatic approach to responsiveness, and also being able to actually move our content up and down without having to manually reposition them, we need to utilize auto layout. So I'm gonna go ahead and select all these layers by holding down Shift and clicking on them all. So now you can see I've got them all selected. I'm gonna hit Shift A. So this will once again group everything inside an auto layout component. So I might change this to content. Oh, sorry, hero-content, because it's in the hero area. Then on the right hand side, I'm gonna make sure that the vertical direction is top to bottom as is. Then I'm gonna change the spacing in between everything to around 20 pixels, looking good. And then I'm gonna go click on this icon over here, and I'm gonna make sure that everything is set to the center. Bang, automatically set. Now, you can see that we need to fix the spacing in between some of these items, but right now, because we've set the global space to be 20 in between all these items, we need something custom in between these two. So what I normally do is select the first layer, hold down Shift, select the second text, hit Shift A, create another auto layout component, right? And change this 20 to maybe a 12, or maybe even an 8, as you can see like that. Then I need to align all the text to the center once again, and that will create the header. Now the last thing we need to do is actually align these two buttons next to each other. So we need to select the first button, hold down Shift, select the second button, hit Shift A, that will group this into an auto layout component. We might rename this to button-group. Then we will change the auto layout direction to left to right, which is horizontal. There we go, with the spacing of 20 pixels in between. So as you can see, now if we decide to move any of the content up to the top, down to the bottom, you can just hold down Shift, up on the keyboard or down on the keyboard, and you can start to navigate this text or whatever component you have in whatever direction inside the auto layout component. It's all automatic. Now, what we need to do is now zoom out, or I'm going to zoom out. I'm just going to click on align horizontal in this design. And remember, with the constraints, we want to make sure we are telling Figma that we want this content to always stay fixed in the center by telling it to stay in the center, right? So not to the left, because right now, if we ever decide to expand it, it will stay fixed to the left, right? It will stay consistent on the left-hand side. But what we actually want it to do is select this, change HUD contents to left to center, and now this will tell Figma to always keep it in the center. So we've got this beautiful responsive view. Then what we want to do is simply create this nice, beautiful screenshot. So we can go ahead and hit Command-Shift-4 on a Mac device, and then just screenshot our Figma, and we can just simply place it, hit copy. I'm going to place it down into my design and just resize this by holding down Option and Shift to resize it from the center point and also maintain the same aspect ratio. Because if you don't, then you'll be resizing it like this, and it'll be a bit of a free-for-all. So just holding down Option and Shift, bring that down. I'm going to sort of like bring that down to the bottom. Also vertically center it. Horizontally center it by clicking on the top icon up here. And then the last thing I want to do is actually make sure that the positioning is in the center, the constraint is in the center horizontally, and then vertically, I want it to be from the top as well. So now if I go ahead and just resize this, we can see that it is perfectly resizing. That is beautiful. Now, the last thing that we are going to do for this design is that we are going to create this beautiful mesh gradient. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and just zoom out. And what we're gonna do is I'm going to just duplicate this entire board, and then I'm gonna hit Enter, delete, and I'm gonna delete everything inside because I want this to be the canvas for the mesh gradient. Now, to create this beautiful mesh gradient, there are many different ways. I've made a tutorial about this before, so I'm gonna follow a very similar tutorial. Dan Petty also shared his way of doing this process, which I thought was an extremely well done way. I'm gonna be adopting Dan Petty's way of doing it, so feel free to follow along and we'll create some beautiful mesh gradients in Figma. I'm gonna hit P on my keyboard, and I'm just gonna randomly draw some weird blobby shapes, right? As you can see. And this will create a vector shape that I can start to control. So I can remove the stroke, I can hit plus on the fill, and this will create a nice shape and with a nice color. So the first color I'm gonna create is maybe just a yellow. So I've got a yellow picked out already. So whatever color you feel like is nice, right? Feel free, have creative freedom, and then simply just move this blob around. I'm gonna hit P on my keyboard again, and then I'm just gonna create more shapes, just random shapes, whatever you feel like, just whatever goes with the flow, right? I'm gonna give this another color of purple. So once again, just choose whatever color you feel like, hit P again, and then I'm just gonna create more blobs, just random blobs on this page, and I'm gonna give it another color, and I might just give it this nice pink. I might hit Command and then bracket so I can push it down. Make sure that everything is sitting inside the frame as well. So I might just push it down to the bottom. And if you want to move it around, you can right click and send to back or bring to front, and that will give you access to the layers really quickly. And then I might duplicate this pink one by hitting Command D, moving it to the top, and I might just change the color to maybe like a nice cyan. All right, there we go. So let's just see what this looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the artboard, hit Enter once, just select all the shapes, hit plus under Effects, and then I'm going to change Drop Shadow to Layer Blur. Now I'm going to click on the sun dial icon, make this maybe 200, and you can see that this blurs all the shapes just like that. So from here, I might just move this around, see what feels good. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all by holding down Shift, select all the icons, all the blobs, hit Command G, group them all together. Then I'm going to hit Command D, that will duplicate it. And then I'm going to go ahead under Layer, under Pass Through, change it to Color Burn. As you can see, this starts to create some nice weird effects and styles with the colors that are on top of one another. So inside, you can start moving these shapes around to create something a little bit more unique and also unexpected. So I'm going to start moving these colors around, see what we can create. And obviously, you need to refine it, and you obviously need to move things around to really see some of the creative stuff that you can create. But if you spend enough time moving colors around, you can definitely create some really nice colors like this. Now, we aren't finished just yet. So let's just move this around a little bit more and see like what we can actually create with our design. All right, so I've got some colors. I'm not too happy about it all, but let's just keep moving forward now. The next thing I want to do is I want to select this artboard. I want to go to plugins, and then I want you to download a plugin called Noise. Now, if you haven't downloaded a plugin before, head over to Manage or Browse Plugins in Community. This will take you to the plugins store for Figma, and I want you to type in Noise in the search bar. Now, all you have to do is simply select Install. That will instantly install the plugin. You just have to head back to your file, go to Plugins, and then find Noise, and that will open up a new modal. All you have to do is create an artboard with a 1512 width with a height of maybe 982, just whatever height that you have in your canvas. Make sure it's inverted and hit the check. Now this will bring a nice noise filter on top of your design, so just move it into the center. And all you have to do is change the layer to, I believe it was soft light. As you can see right there, you can then reduce the image opacity to maybe like 20%, and it just adds that nice little texture around it. Now you also want to make sure you click the rectangle, bring it into your design, and you can see that it sits right there, looking good. Now the colors are quite bright, so I might just change the opacity of the groups of blobs to maybe 50%. Maybe change this one to 50% as well, and just see what that looks like. All right, well, obviously this could be a lot better, but the point of this is just to show you guys how to create it. Now that we've actually created our background, I'm gonna rename the frame to background. I'm gonna hit Command C. I'm gonna head over to my design. I'm gonna click on the actual frame of where our design is, right? So where this design is. And then what I'm gonna do is uncollapse everything, and then I'll hit Command V, drop that background down, and then I'm gonna drag and drop it into the bottom of where my design is. So the last layer, as you can see there. Now I'm gonna hit Center Align, bang. As you can see, once it hits Center Align, it brings it into the center of this entire artboard. And then I'm gonna align it vertically to the center. And as you can see, it sits right there. So as you can see, we have created a beautiful design in Figma that is responsive, is efficient, it's automatic as well. So let's review what we've learned. We have learned how to create a responsive design, right? As you can see over here. And inside this responsive design, we have a grid system. So if we hit Control G, we've utilized a grid layout to keep everything consistent. Inside our header, we've also used auto layout to systematically create spacing in between our components. We've also used auto layout to be able to move items systematically in our design, so we don't have to manually create it. We've also learned how to use components, so if we ever decide to use a button anywhere in our designs, we only need to change it once, as you can see, and it will change it everywhere in our designs. We've also learned how to use global color styles to be able to access colors for our design, so we don't have to manually insert them every time we want to use it. And the beautiful thing about everything that we've designed is that it is responsive. So if we ever decided to make a tablet view, it can be done literally in seconds, guys. Now, hopefully you've learned a lot in this crash course. And once again, if you want to expedite your learning process and really deepen your UI design and Figma understanding and workflows and processes, make sure to check out my masterclass. A link is in the description. And if you want to get 10% off, make sure to use the coupon code. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video very soon.